Good afternoon. I'm Winston Sammett from Muri Asset Management, hosting today's edition of The Last Word. Each Friday afternoon, we take a look back at the week that was across the economy, markets, politics and sport. As usual, we're joined by Chris Gosling from Australian Fund Managers. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks, Winston. Nice to be here.
Chris, it's been another week of volatility on equity markets, which has flowed on to other markets and asset classes. As is so often the case, interest rates were the initial cause of the problem, but it flowed on from there.
That's quite right, Winston. It certainly did. I mean, following their meeting last week, where the US Fed put rates, it was a strange situation because they basically said rates are going to fall in September, but they didn't do anything about them in August. The market probably didn't like that very much. There was an element of why not get on with it?
Yeah.
And then things started to fall apart from there with some economic statistics, particularly on payrolls. And volatility spread through the market. The market fell sharply. It was reporting season anyway. The tech stocks in particular, there'd been rotation out of those and into smaller sectors. And then it went global, really. Now it's stabilised a bit now, but I think there's still plenty of nervousness around.
Okay. So, Chris, this just added to the existing concerns that the Nasdaq was set for a fall. And we'd already seen some rotation out of tech stocks and into sectors such as utilities.
Yeah, that's true. I think that whole nervousness around the reporting season wouldn't have helped. Plus the fact that markets, you'd have to say, were overvalued, particularly those tech stocks. So that combination was just enough to trigger a sell-off. Investors headed for the exits, and when they all try and head for the exits at the same time, you and I both know what happens.
The result is inevitable.
That's quite right. Happens every time.
Now, with regards to back home, the RBA met early this week and dashed any expectations for a rate cut here, possibly until next year.
I think that's true. The RBA is absolutely definite in saying that inflation is number one enemy and they're going to fix that. I mean, there was even talk within the RBA about raising rates. Now, they didn't do that, but it must have been pretty line ball sort of decision. What was interesting is one of their issues was that the government is stimulating the economy with whether it's tax cuts or income support, while the Reserve Bank is trying to dampen it. And the economy is not that strong, and there are people who are obviously struggling. So you've seen this week a bit of back and forth, both from the Treasurer and the Prime Minister, saying that what they're doing in stimulating the economy is absolutely working towards reducing inflation. I don't quite get the argument, except that perhaps there's an election coming around in the not too distant future. It's got to be here by May. There's a possibility that it may be here in November, December.
Right. Talking of elections, less than 90 days now to go until the US election, and what seemed like a foregone conclusion that Trump would win is no longer looking as certain.
Now, that's been really interesting, hasn't it? I mean, everyone called on Biden to step down for so long. When he eventually did, there was initial shock, horror and hesitation, and then everyone's sort of jumped in behind Kamala Harris and now her running mate, and Trump doesn't look quite as confident or sound quite as confident as he did just a couple of weeks ago when he'd just taken a bullet for democracy, as he said. Also, we're seeing his pick for vice president or vice president candidate is also coming under a bit of pressure from precisely the sector of the economy that Kamala Harris appeals to, which is the female side of the population. So that's going to be interesting. What was a foregone conclusion? Don't think so anymore.
Sticking on politics and overseas, there's been riots across the UK based on immigration. As someone from England, albeit a long time ago, what's your take on that?
Yeah, well, thanks for reminding me. 50 years ago, Winston, we might also be sort of the same generation.
Yeah, I think so.
Somewhere along those lines. this is really sad to see this happen to England and be so widespread, as the bastion of democracy. Being a bit contentious, the British basically exported England to the world and introduced colonialism. The Romans had done it a couple of thousand years before. But now the boot's on the other foot and there are people from around the world coming into England, then the Brits aren't that happy about it. So it's being a bit ironic. One just hope it settles down, but these sorts of things generally reaffirm prejudices rather than soften prejudices.
Right. Now, yesterday, I think it was the day before, the Qantas board announced it had clawed back almost $10 million over the former CEO's Alan Joyce's final salary. Do you think that's fair, and will it be a turning point for the airline and its tarnished reputation?
Look, Qantas has really had a problem, hasn't it? It was probably one of the best brands in Australia, possibly one of the best brands in the world. Everyone praised how well Alan Joyce managed the company, and he obviously ruled it with an iron fist. He obviously ruled the boardroom with an iron fist as well. He got away with a huge amount of money while the reputation of Qantas was absolutely shredded.
Yeah.
So they've cleaned the chairman out and the CEO out. The new chairman, John Mullen, I think is a perfect man for the job. I mean, he's strong, he's tough when he needs to be. And I think they've made a good decision because it sent a message to the market that you can't get away with those sorts of things. So yeah, I think it's fair. There'll be some Qantas passengers and shareholders say it's not fair enough, and maybe they should have gone for more.
What about the Olympics? What a fantastic effort and results by the Australian team in Paris.
Yeah, every morning we wake up and there's more good news. I think it's absolutely fantastic. We've only got a couple more days to go before normal sleep patterns return. I can sense perhaps a ticker tape parade coming on when the teams get back, probably with a couple of politicians up there basking in the
glory.
limelight and the glory. But as we said before, there is an election around the corner, so I don't want to take anything away from the athletes. Are fantastic, and no doubt the Prime Minister has apparently suddenly become interested in skateboarding, which is now an Olympic sport. So maybe there'll be a skateboard park in Marrickville soon.
I wonder if he'll be interested in breakdancing. It's also an Olympic
I think
sport.
he'd make a good breakdancer.
Okay, Chris, let's leave it there for another week. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.
Cheerio.